from a domestic perspective at least, okay, global markets are in turmoil, but is there any cause for concern in the way domestic consumption patterns are playing out? Any big events in the future? I mean, I'll point one out that's been seen in the news recently, El Nino, which is always a distraction or hurts the Indian economy. Is that a major risk? Is that going to play out? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm going to keep an eye on the El Nino, how it is progressing. But more importantly, the first part of your question is what are the effect of all this on the Indian economy? Now, of course, El Nino is a risk factor, but I would say that all of what is happening in the US with SVB and the other banks and with Credit Suisse has got absolutely no implication for the US, for the Indian economy and Indian corporate earnings. In fact, since this crisis has started, we have seen oil prices go down. And that's extremely positive for India because we are trying to deal with inflation caused by high commodity prices, and certainly lower oil prices will benefit the economy, will benefit a whole host of corporate earnings.
Absolutely. I think every time oil goes down, our economy benefits.
Absolutely. But it takes time for that to actually play out and to see the effect in the economy. But for the time being, there is a short-term correlation between oil prices falling and Indian equities falling. But let's not get into that. Coming to the El Nino effect, I think that's quite a serious issue because
what is the El Nino effect for someone that really doesn't understand it very well? What is it?
So basically it is warming up of the waters in the Pacific, and that usually leads to less moisture in the clouds, and therefore the precipitation in the Indian subcontinent is lower, which means we get uneven rains, we get shortfall in rains in certain critical areas. Now, India is a very large country geographically, and the patterns of the rainfall also differ from state to state and from a period of time as well. And therefore, this El Nino has an erratic and uneven effect on the Indian monsoon, which is very important for the rural areas, which is very important from point of view of food grain cultivation.
I think historically also El Nino has been associated with drought in India. Is
Absolutely,
that?
Yes. I think I would say that 40-50% of the, or rather more recently last 10 years, 60% of the droughts coincide with the El Nino effect. And you know, we've been having almost 5 great years of monsoon. 4 or 5 years have been great from monsoon point of view. By law of averages, you can expect a poor monsoon, and that's something that the Indian markets will have to deal with. But you know, Varun, there is a lot of choice and a lot of diversity in Indian stock markets. So if certain companies are impacted by the monsoon, there will be some which will benefit because of a very warm summer, and we'll come to that. And there are some which are totally unimpacted by what happens in the rural sector and what happens in the agricultural sector. So investors can easily move their money from the sectors which are being impacted by a poor monsoon to sectors which are not at all affected.
Understood. So what sectors would you say would benefit the most from, I guess, these different conditions? And what sectors are set to suffer?
See, I would say that if you are perspiring and you are expecting a very warm summer, extremely hot summer, then you can hedge your bet by buying the companies which provide the cooling products. That could be air conditioners, coolers, fans, all those sort of companies. I think they will come into focus and have extremely good demand. Second is beverage companies like Varun Beverages is there, or ice cream companies like Vadilal Industries. I think they should see very high sales growth if the summer is very warm. And then there are the power companies, especially the ones which do not have a back-to-back power purchase agreement and sell part of their power in the open market. They may benefit because power consumption may go up, and you may see the prices of per unit power also.
Yeah, in fact, power companies should be very well poised to benefit because on one hand, commodity prices falling, on the other hand, in the domestic market, here's electricity demand surge. So hopefully, there's a good play to be made in some power stocks.
Absolutely, I think, large power companies like NTPC, certainly they have a lot of capacity which they can get going if there's a shortfall of power. But I would still prefer to play the appliance companies than the power companies. I think the returns over there may be better. Then if there's actually a drought and you feel that come June, July, things are not looking that great on the monsoon front, then you may have to see a mild correction or a sharp correction in all agri-related stocks. So that includes pesticides, includes fertilizers, includes tractor manufacturers. And mind you, these sectors have done exceedingly well over the last 4 or 5 years or so. So you could expect some correction over there. India's FMCG, the likes of HUL, Nestle, Godrej, they're all very much connected and linked to the rural sector as well. A lot of their sales come from the rural areas. Their maximum growth over the last 4 or 5 years has come because of expanding the rural network. And if the rural demand is soft because of a monsoon, then that's going to affect their volumes as well.
And I think there's also data shows that over the last couple of quarters, rural demand in general has been soft. So this could be, I guess, piling on more misery on top of...
Absolutely. I think rural has been affected more by the pandemic than the urban areas. And that effect was felt for many months even after the lockdowns were lifted. And now if we have this particular situation, then certainly it's going to impact the sentiment. Also, they could have a negative effect on the government finances as well. It's because the government will, of course, if there's a drought or if there is a situation where the rainfall is short, then they will step in and provide some stimulus or some monetary benefits to the people of that area. And so, in the election year, Varun, 2024 is just around the corner, the government will try and, as much as possible, mitigate the effect of a drought.
No, I see that. That makes sense. But maybe, I guess, to play the devil's advocate, on one hand, yes, there's a risk of a drought, but I think India is maybe more resilient than it's ever been to face a drought like this. I think our reservoir levels are at all-time highs. Our food grain stocks are at all-time highs. So, okay, in our recent history, every time the Elninos hit, it's been bad. There's been a fall in rural demand, but hopefully there's more resilience in the economy this time.
I would absolutely think so. And groundwater levels are also high because of 4 or 5 good monsoons. So I think we should be able to tide through these El Nino effect, if at all. But Varun, market is all about sentiment. So even if the data shows that the monsoons are pretty much fine, but if for some reason rural demand is even slightly soft, then the companies which I mentioned, the sectors which I mentioned, because of adverse sentiment, you may see a sell-off in them.